Good morning or afternoon, wherever you are in the world across the Asia Pacific region. My name's Rebecca DeChico, and I'm hosting this webinar, Why Should I Join the Women in BIM Mentor Scheme? This webinar essentially will touch on women in BIM as a group, its key initiatives and core themes, as well as really a summary around the mentor scheme, its processes, resources, and benefits. So I do hope you enjoy this session. As I'm based in Australia, the first thing I'd like to do is to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the traditional custodians of the land on which we live and work. I'd also like to pay respect to our elders, past, present, and future. So for those of you who maybe know a little bit about what I do and I guess the history of women in BIM, as I said, my name's Rebecca. I'm the founder and the global chair of our core executive leadership team, which is essentially a global group pushing and driving the Women in BIM incentives. I also obviously link into many affiliations across the world, including the UK, the US, across Australia and New Zealand, and even in Asia. And some of the groups that I'm involved with are listed here. I'm a passionate role model for future roles in construction, and in particular for women's equal representation in the built environment. Women in BIM are essentially a group supporting women and gender minorities and essentially aims to support growth in this space. We come together as a global group. We have people positioned all over the world, and many of you would know that we have what we call regional leadership or regional leaders, who are essentially leaders in their respective countries or cities, driving our core themes. We work together in unity, we collaborate, we constantly communicate, and we're trying to drive change across our sector, much of which is obviously proving to be such an important initiative in line with other global incentives. So our core themes around the Women in BIM group essentially came about to ensure that we addressed three key priorities across the built environment sector. The first being to essentially attract and promote women into digitally related careers. What we do is we try to showcase role models and position women across events in a predominantly male white environment. We also aim to promote and support women who might be pivoting into different roles or who may have an interest in moving into BIM or digital construction roles. And finally, we advance and retain. So our primary purpose, one of our primary purposes is to ensure that many women who are in the sector, who are working in digital roles, are retaining their positions, are not leaving the industry. Much of the research suggests that many women are leaving the industry, which is one of our core themes and one of our drivers around the projects that we support. So today's session, we will focus on the mentor scheme, and we encourage you to submit any questions you may have. We do that through our chosen platform, Mentimeter, and the webinar will record these questions via mentee.com. If you do navigate to this website and simply enter this code, which will be popped into the chat dialog box for all of you that are attending, we'll be able to answer some of your questions as we navigate through the session. So I guess the first point I'd like to touch on today is where it all began. You know, what is the history of the mentor scheme, why it's important, why we do this, and why many of our regional leads and global executive continue to promote this as volunteers. In around early 2002, we launched our first mentor scheme for women in the industry, and we are at the point of obviously in the application phase of our fourth year of the scheme. And our mentor lead at the time, Katia Velova, who was an instrumental leader as part of this initiative, very much founded this scheme, and obviously it was endorsed by all of the leaders across the group at that time. This scheme aims to address the issues around diversity. We know that there are predominantly issues around diversity that relate to obviously having enough women in our sector to supplement the growth and the growth in the construction industry. And one of our main objectives at the onset was essentially to create Women in BIM as a space for us to collaborate, to communicate around different initiatives and obviously around some of the issues that the industry is having with skills shortages, and openly discuss those topics. We also found at the time that it was very important for us to have support, to have support for one another, and this was a key driver for the mentor scheme at the time. As I mentioned, this is our fourth scheme, so we aim to support women regardless of where they sit across the sector, the built environment sector, in digital, to obviously drive skills, education, and insight. We know that some people across the sector find it very difficult to engage in the digital space, predominantly because it is a very an ever-changing and evolving space in our sector. We know that there aren't enough people to supplement the roles, and therefore the mentor scheme addresses that. We invite members all over the world, and any person that is looking to support the mentor scheme to either act as mentees or mentors. And I'll speak a little bit about the application process as we move through the session today. Our mentor scheme has essentially proven back to the team that it is relevant, and it continues to be relevant today. Every year we find that the numbers continue to grow year upon year. We did find that in the very early stages there were a lack of mentors. We've been really driving and pushing the fact that male and females across the built environment sector, or those of gender minorities, join us as mentors, because in the past we have never had enough mentors to supplement the high volume of mentees that are requiring this type of support. One little tidbit of data for you is that in the first day of our application only this year, we had 30 mentors apply and 73 mentees across basically the global community, which is just fantastic. As a, introduction to the mentoring scheme, what we wanted to do was touch on the importance of mentoring. What is mentoring, why it's important, how we can essentially support each other in this journey. And for women in BIM, mentoring is essentially about ensuring that we have guidance whereby one person, or obviously a number of people, depending on how many mentees you have and how many mentors are supporting, share their knowledge. We have a primary problem in this industry with being able to openly share our knowledge, and this is something that I've been extremely passionate about as the chair and founder of this group, but also extremely passionate about sharing the experiences you have. And as someone who has been in the industry for 20 plus years, I find that if I had this kind of support early in my career, it would have obviously changed the way that I potentially address certain situations. But our mentoring scheme around BIM very much extends beyond BIM. It is not about just obviously the building information modelling process, which stemmed out of the UK. It is very much about the digital built environment. We do not help you to learn a technology or support you in education and training, but we are there to help you in executing your role. And that could include technical advice, it could include different types of advice, and essentially the mentor becomes that person that you can rely on and trust. Mentoring in this context, essentially around BIM, is the exchange of knowledge, but also to facilitate growth and potential redirection of our mentees. Many of our mentees that are applying for the scheme are essentially looking to pivot into new roles. They may be a traditional professional degree, such as architecture, engineering, etc., and they may want to pivot into digital roles. And this is where we provide that advice on motivating and empowering our mentees to identify their goals and issues. But the role of the mentor is extremely important. It is a charitable act. We know that it comes through your desire to help other people, and sometimes we find we just don't have enough. And as you've seen in the past, we just haven't had enough mentors apply for our scheme. So therefore, what we do encourage around the mentor scheme is that we need you to connect as a mentor to our community. We want you to expand your skills and develop others, and even help you in advancing your leadership skills by providing those moments of self-reflection. It allows us as leaders in the built environment digital leaders in the built environment as mentors to take a moment of self-reflection but also to gain those insights into how women are navigating their roles, those that are either in existing roles or just joining, obviously, professional roles. So it is a very important part of our scheme, and we endorse, obviously, any mentor to apply it. The role of the mentee is equally as important. We know, and as I mentioned earlier, the role of mentees is essentially to be there to ask for that level of support, to gain insight from somebody, maybe inside your business or outside of your business, to help you in a professional environment. And you may look to that person as a role model, and it can benefit you in a number of different ways. And those ways include understanding how to pivot into the new roles, as I've mentioned, leadership skills in relation to BIM or digital construction, and building really your self-confidence. You'll be able to set clear goals, define those goals, and then work on a clear path to be able to achieve those goals with your mentor, and essentially gain a better understanding of the workplace or the built environment. I know for me it has always been different depending on your workplace at the time, but it is important for you to accelerate that process by essentially networking and developing your own skills in that self-reflection process. The reason why we host these sessions this year, this is the first of a series of sessions that we're hosting all over the world in 4 different languages, is that many of the processes that we go through are sometimes not understood by those that are applying, or you may feel that you want to apply but you're not sure if it's right for you, and some of these questions have popped up over a number of years. So therefore, this section of the webinar today will go through that step-by-step process and really explain what the mentor scheme application and matching process is to women in BIM and how we achieve those goals. So the first thing we will encourage, and we're continuing to grow membership, our numbers continue to grow year upon year all over the world, is that we do obviously would like you as a young or regardless of where you sit in your career, female or minority gender, to become a Women in BIM member. Our membership is very important. It is, again, all built off of voluntary time and a voluntary team across the world who essentially provides news and updates. We have on-demand events and webinars much like this, and obviously we have different areas on the website that offer that support in terms of global digital initiatives. But specifically to the mentor scheme, we have a number of resources that are available to you, which I'll talk through as we move through the webinar. Some of them include record sheets to record your process, as well as obviously our podcasts and other documentation. So our applications opened on the 23rd of January, and we still have 2 weeks before the applications close. So therefore, obviously, we will be reviewing those applications from the 3rd of March. On our website, womeninbim.org, under the Mentor Application tab, you can apply to become a mentor or a mentee, and we will add that link to the chat dialog box now. But who can apply? So regardless of your level of experience, we often have questions around, am I the right type of person? Can I help someone as a mentor? Or if I'm a mentee and I may have some interest in digital or BIM, digital engineering, digital construction, you're not quite sure. And therefore, regardless of your level of experience and where you sit across the built environment, if you have an interest, we encourage you to apply. The applications process obviously is another few weeks. So if you have interest, you can apply regardless of your gender and background as a mentor. And obviously Women in BIM mentees are female members and supporters. Once our applications close, so essentially from the 3rd of March up until the moment that we announce or I guess communicate to those that have applied if they've been matched, we review and undertake quite an elaborate I guess interviewing process. So the aim is to ensure that we are matching applicants effectively. And once the mentor scheme application period closes, we will notify you on your application and that we are reviewing your application, and we will constantly keep you informed. We have obviously our LinkedIn organization, our member database, and our social media platforms, where we constantly keep everybody, I guess, kept in the loop regarding the process. But the process does include quite an elaborate, I guess, analysis of the data, because the applications do include questions that relate to your experiences, your knowledge, and what you're looking for. So during the selection interview process, we will have our regional leads all over the world, and again, our countries and our applications are essentially globally, so I couldn't list out all the countries because we're covering so many. But we essentially have our regional leads and our core team, global team, reviewing all the applications, setting up interviews with appropriate people to get to know them a little bit better, and obviously then announce our matches. We essentially take around 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the numbers. And I did have an update on the numbers today that we've already hit 160 mentors and almost or just over 220 mentees, which is exceeding expectations already. So this process is generally around 4 weeks, and we finish around mid-April. Our team will match the most appropriate mentor and mentee according to certain parameters that we apply. So those parameters will generally be a consistent approach for all of those going through the interview process and all of those people helping us. And that would include reviewing your location, your current level of experience, your expectations, your requirements around the type of mentor you're looking for, and your desires for growth. Sometimes, and in the past, certainly in the past, we were unable to match all of our mentees with mentors. And this was a primary problem for us because we know that it is very important for us to try and make as many matches as we possibly can. And I'll get onto that shortly because the numbers are looking very good this year and hopefully that won't occur. So once matched, generally around the end of April, we would usually close the process, and in the first week of May, our couples will be notified in regard to their match, and then we'll coordinate and conduct mentoring sessions with the guidelines set out in what is known as the Women in BIM Mentoring Scheme Handbook. Mentors obviously are responsible for leading and facilitating the relationship. We rely on our mentors to continue to facilitate that, particularly because our mentees might not be sure as to how much they can contact you. And we do rely on our mentors as leaders in the digital environment to be proactive and continually chase up. The mentoring process essentially does run for around 6 minutes, but we do encourage a career-long relationship essentially. We endorse a monthly meeting, but really it's up to you. Whatever you feel is relevant for you and your match. And if both parties are happy to continue in meeting up more regularly and across a longer period, we really encourage that. And it is a very important part of establishing connections and networks. And this is why we don't isolate ourselves to one region, one country. We make sure that we are matching people according to their needs, and also we are growing a global community to address some of those core themes I mentioned earlier around promoting, endorsing, and encouraging women in the built environment. Essentially, this aligns to wider global issues around gender equality, and we know that it is a very important initiative for us as women in BIM. So we do encourage you to continue that journey with your match. Our mentor scheme resources, again, were developed by volunteers. So all of the content you'll see on our website is developed by a group of volunteers. The first, probably the main document that we developed, and again, Katia Velova was the main author, that has been essentially updated a number of times to reflect the current changes in the built environment, is our mentoring scheme handbook. Our mentoring scheme handbook very much is a high-level document aimed to help you to understand the importance of mentoring and the importance of the process, but also to give you tips as to some of the things you might be involved with. And that's why as we moved through the handbook, we knew that although a lengthy document, it could be a reference guide for those that are working in the industry, that are looking at justifying potentially their time with their employers, and understanding a bit more about what mentoring is, around the benefits and the best practices. We also encourage you to review the handbook because it does discuss some of the wider issues that are occurring around skills adoption and supporting our initiative in addressing some of these skills shortages across the world. The Women in BIM handbook has also been condensed this year. We are yet to publish the condensed version. It will be ready once our applications close. But the Women in BIM mini handbook, as we're referring it to, is essentially a short, sharp guide to mentoring, 3 to 4 pages in lieu of the large mentoring handbook, which is in excess of, I think, 40 to 50 pages. And the Women in BIM mini handbook is a very, I think, important document because we have found that, many people will sometimes neglect reviewing the main document. So we've basically condensed it, included some really important areas around what it is, why it's important, the responsibilities and the tasks. And we've also translated the Women in BIM Mentor Handbook into 4 other languages: Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, and German. And our Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, and German friends very much are thankful of this, and they're really obviously helping us to grow the network in those regions. Another thing that is accessible through the membership portal for Women in BIM is the Women in BIM Mentoring Record Sheet. Our record sheet is there to help you to monitor the discussions, to obviously manage the relationship, and potentially even to communicate back to your employer some of the things that you've been discussing, some of the areas that you may have learnt. We always link people and obviously mentees and people across our network to different resources and applications and et cetera, et cetera. So it is very much not just a mentoring journey, but it is an education one as well. It is also important to note that all of our resources that we embed within the Women in BIM website, womeninbim.org, also include our video content and podcasts. So we generally will record all of our webinars and host them on our Women in BIM YouTube channel. We'll also host and share podcasts on a regular basis, generally monthly, around topical subjects that pop up by our regional leads. We try to navigate those discussions on a global level all over the world. And these topics are very important. For example, we've touched on skills and skills development. We've touched on the importance of digital through the obviously design and construction process and managing the data through a common data environment. And we're also moving into more evolved topics such as smart cities and the evolution of digital twin outcomes, which essentially is popping up across multiple regions of the world. For those of you who don't know our mentor leaders, they are Natalia Oliveira. She's our mentor lead based in South America and has joined the Women in BIM Mentor Scheme in 2022 to lead and drive the strategic approach toward the incentives. She'll be hosting a session in Spanish, and we often discuss how we can make our sessions better. Obviously we have a number of different ways we record the benefits of the scheme as well. We also have Nicole on the call today, and she is our global management lead. And Nicole's role is essentially to support and manage all of our global activities and projects. And one of our projects is the Mentor Scheme. Nicole's instrumental in setting up the process, in managing the applications, and in allocating responsibilities to our global network in terms of interviews and matching. So thank you to both. And just a really, I guess, a quick, not an introduction, but a kind of discussion point around the benefits, because we do find that as much as many organisations internally would continue to endorse mentoring, we do find when it is from an outside organisation, there might be a little bit more justification from you regarding your time. So we obviously strive for greatness. We want to support the wider community, and we want to achieve some of these ambitions. So essentially our mentoring stats come from reliable resources documented in the Women in BIM Handbook, and some of them include that 87% of mentors and mentees feel empowered by their relationships. They gain greater confidence. that mentored employees are 5 times more likely to get a promotion. That's obviously 70% of the most profitable companies globally have a mentor scheme, and mentors are found that mentoring enhances their experiences and their meaningfulness at work. We also found that mentoring programs dramatically improved promotion rates and retention rates for women, obviously for women and minorities compared to non-mentored employees, and that 60% of graduate students require or would like a mentor. We also find that many of I guess the justification piece around mentoring also links into the evolving nature of the digital built environment, and we know that it is very important to touch on that because it is constantly evolving. There are constantly new, not just technologies. We know that the technology is moving very quickly, but essentially we know that a benefit is to keep up to speed as a mentee with some of those developments, and having that insight by your mentor in relation to this knowledge. But why should you apply as a mentor? We've kind of touched on this already, but really we just want people that have a desire to help us and desire to help the industry grow, that can support, that are collaborative, that have an open and curious mind. We don't necessarily need women that are senior in their businesses or that have a qualification or identify as a woman. We openly welcome, obviously, women, men, and gender minorities to act as mentors. We encourage and endorse that because we just don't have enough mentors across our scheme. Another, I guess, a little bit of information as a mentor, personal satisfaction is very important. If I personally wasn't linked or affiliated to the Women in BIM Mentor Scheme or the Women in BIM initiative as a whole, I wouldn't have that same level of satisfaction knowing that we're constantly changing the industry and trying to affect the industry in a positive way. But also to gain those leadership skills, if you are somebody that isn't quite in the position that you might want to be, it is a good reminder that many of our mentees are graduates. So you've been in the industry a few years, you're moving into, different roles across your business, or maybe you're investigating new roles. We encourage you to also become a mentor. And we do endorse you encouraging, if you'd like, for both. It's really up to you what you feel is relevant on a personal level. So many of our suggestions and tips and tricks can be found in our mentor handbook, but we have documented a couple of things for our mentors to take away today if you are interested. And one of them is, as a mentor, you're not expected to train your mentee. You're not expected to know everything about the technology. You're not expected to understand the standards around information management or collaborative working or whatever you're looking at in terms of digital or innovation, but you are expected to give insight or links into resources. You're also expected to, welcome to point to the mentee these resources, what might be appropriate for the mentee to review. And I would encourage you as a mentor, if you are a female mentor and a member on the Women in BIM website, if you are not a member and you're a male or a minority gender and you do want to access our materials, we do have materials that we endorse on our website from all over the world. We also encourage our mentors to engage in, meeting at industry events. Women in BIM are now starting to appear face-to-face. We hosted our first conference in Australia only last year. We are starting to endorse and encourage more face-to-face activities. So we do encourage you to network with your colleagues and for our mentors to provide you links to those events that are occurring in your region. And, one of the things that I've been talking about a lot lately is being honest with yourself as a mentor, equally as a mentee, around what your experience has been like. And the stories that I've told a number of the mentees that I've worked with around experiences that I've had as a woman in the digital built environment. Some very positive, some not so positive. So keeping it honest, keeping it practical, listen, asking questions, and really pointing out some of those barriers. But for those of you who are looking to apply to become a mentee, 3 things that you need to have are that you need to identify as a woman or a person of minority gender. You need to work, or you would like to work in a BIM or digitally constructed construction sector role, and you're willing to do the work. You're willing to commit to the 6-month program to help encourage, obviously, your growth. And we do endorse that you don't pull out of the scheme halfway through, because we do have a lot of people that apply, and we do want you to get the most out of it. Personally, and what I've seen, as well as some of the notes on this slide, indicate that becoming a mentee will increase your confidence, will allow you to ask those questions that you may not sometimes feel you can in those meetings or workshops that you feel you're a minority. We also provide, the mentee some insight around, innovation. So you'll gain some new perspective, you'll gain fresh ideas, and you'll also be able to access resources, as I've mentioned. But on top of that, you'll be able to resolve some of those challenges and then identify the new skills that you might need along your journey. Some tips for our mentees is that, as a mentee, really you're expected to work in your own time, but also, sometimes it is during work hours to improve your technical skills, and really do the recommended reading yourself rather than expect it to be delivered to you by the mentor. Again, being proactive, and we find that most of our mentees are proactive. Ask lots of questions, even if those questions don't seem suitable, ask them anyway, and draw from them what you can to help you grow in your journey, and always find out about our face-to-face or networking opportunities rather, because many of our mentors, myself included, will always attend or speak at industry events, and we are still seeing far too many all-male white panels on events. An event next week I won't mention, we're seeing a number of panels that are just still too obviously male focused. So we really want to break that apart. We really want you to get there. We really want you to start having the confidence to be able to potentially be part of that network. During the process, so from May through to December, we also host our mentor sessions where we bring together our mentors quarterly, or maybe twice or 3 times, to discuss with the Women in BIM Global team any concerns, any lessons learnt, and to provide feedback so that obviously we can make changes to the scheme if needed, or associate better processes and principles to the initiative. We also ensure that our mentees are happy. It's about everyone, not just the mentors, but both mentors and mentees. And therefore, we often send out surveys to find out how you are progressing. And we do encourage you to obviously link in with who you are connected to in your region to grow networking opportunities through our social channels. This is the first year we'll also be providing all of our mentees and our matches, essentially, a certificate. It's not a professional certificate. We're not endorsed by any organisation. Rather, it is a completion certificate as part of your learning journey, as part of your career development, to essentially support the next steps of your career. So we do encourage you to do that. But women in BIM also, and it pains me to say, just don't have enough mentors generally to be able to match all of our mentees. Some of our mentors are very generous in offering their support to multiple mentees, which we've done in the past. However, Women in BIM founded our mentor scheme and also at the group mentoring workshops, which are group mentoring workshops that support all of those mentees who are unable to be matched in previous years in our group mentoring setting. However, this year, we are essentially launching our group mentoring to all mentee applicants, allowing you to be a part of the community, to grow our community. You'll be able to meet with other women in BIM members all over the world. You'll be able to learn about topics of interest in your region, and you'll be able to become part of our mentoring network to support your career. This year, we have condensed the group mentoring workshop themes, essentially, based on feedback from our community, and those themes have been condensed to support the way that we obviously help our mentees in building skills. So the first, which is usually run out of the UK, was previously our BIM Basics, but obviously based on the extension of the International Series of Standards 19650, we are bringing together with it information management principles in line with the 19650 parts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6 yet to be released. Career coaching in the built environment has been our most successful group mentoring workshop, as we've had the fortune of somebody that has supported us, Elizabeth Kavanagh, now with Arup, who has been hosting these sessions as a volunteer, which is just a great experience for us. And these are quite elaborate career coaching sessions with a certified career coach, which is amazing. Our third group mentoring session is around BIM process, digital engineering process, whatever you want to call it, and client requirements. We are global. We try not to fuss ourselves with terminology, but understanding BIM processes and client requirements, we always endorse and align to the international standards, and we ensure that we are aligning terminology and references to international standards. So these BIM processes and client requirements discussions and group mentoring really talk about setting the framework for our clients, giving insight and advice to our mentees around how you would discuss some of the strategic principles around the implementation of BIM or digital to our clients, and also what to look for, when clients are asking for information, and understanding some of the terminologies. And we often have, a debate around the plethora of different acronyms and terminologies that exists all over the world. The final UMA, it was previously known as our UMAs, which were unmatched applicants, but our group mentoring workshop is the culture and change management process. And I, for one, continue to be challenged by the impact of digital in regard to the culture of the construction industry. And our core team member and education lead, Jen Barrett, University of Lancashire in the UK, hosts our culture and change management workshops. She's an academic, and she helps our mentees in striving to address some of those cultural barriers that exist in the digital built environment. So we do encourage you to keep an eye out if you have obviously selected through the application process, if you'd like to be involved with these. And for those of you who have not applied, we encourage you to also apply for our group mentoring workshops. With that, this is the end of the webinar. We do have our Mentee meter now available for questions, and we have Nicole DeChico joining us for our question and answer time, which will run for approximately 10 or so minutes. So thanks, Nicole. Over to you.
Thanks, Rebecca. I'm just reviewing the Mentee now. The first question we've got up today is a question around the application process, and if I, as a mentor, add a second language other than my designated language, will I mentor someone outside of my country?
So that's a good question. We've often had a huge number of mentees based in South America, Brazil, and the number of mentors in that region has been very low. So what we've found that with mentors that have a potential second language, and we do need to find matches for applicants that might need support in that language, we will obviously drive the match that way. But really the match is about the individual, finding the common links, finding the common solutions that might work for each other, speaking to our applicants, and really working out what is the right personal choice for both parties. So that is a great question, and one that we do consider when we are mining through that data and reviewing the applicants. So thank you.
I guess another question along the same lines is it likely to get paired with someone in the same country as you?
We try to match applicants so that there is an opportunity to meet in person. However, based on the impact of the pandemic and based on people's limitations with travel, that sometimes doesn't apply. And we will often review the locations, subdivide the mentee and mentor applicants by location, and then obviously review if there is an appropriate match based on the interview process and based on those discussions. it is important for you as a mentee to potentially link with someone face to face. However, as I've mentioned in my experience, I've mentored young women in New Zealand, different countries, even though very close, and I've also experienced in the UK. So it is very much dependent on the suitability of both parties.
Thanks, Rebecca. Another quick question around, I guess, resources. How can we access the Women in BIM Mentor record sheet, and how will we be able to access the Women in BIM Mini Mentor Handbook?
So if you are a member, and I'm presuming you might not be, if you're a member and you navigate to womeninbim.org, underneath the Mentor Scheme tab, so if you click on the Mentor Scheme tab, you'll see that there are free resources there in the way of applications and the handbook. However, as I mentioned, because we are updating our content as we speak, ready for the end of the month, our mentor handbook and our mini mentor handbook will be available and accessible under that page. However, if you have a My Women in BIM account and you log in, My Women in BIM account has a number of areas or resources, and under the mentor scheme area of the Women in BIM resource zone, there is a link directly to the handbook. There will be a link to the mini handbook, and there will be a link and there is a link to the record sheet.
Great, thanks, Rebecca. I guess there's a couple of comments, not so much questions, but I think it's worthwhile mentioning them as well. One person has said, I'm interested in BIM management, but I'm not sure what kind of skills I need to achieve it. I guess,
great. Yeah, this is a great one because, we often have questions from people around, is this scheme relevant to me? And as I mentioned earlier through the slides, if you do have interest in moving into a different role, but you're not really sure what that role might be, we can certainly look to match you with somebody who has experience in that role and can provide insight to you and who can help you on your journey. And this is the whole point to encouraging, and I mentioned in our core themes, promoting and encouraging young women to enter these careers, because we're primary issues with skills shortages at the moment. We need more people in the digital built environment, both in BIM, digital engineering, digital construction, and that space essentially, data management, etc. So I do encourage you to apply because, there are the role of the BIM manager is another one we could probably touch on another time. But essentially, it might vary, So I think it is important that you do apply, and we can maybe find you a match.
Another question is, can I be a mentor and a mentee?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned we did have some people that applied for both last year, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nicole. We're okay with that. I think, in terms of the application process, we'll review what's the most relevant to you because, it is important for us to match the right people. I keep, obviously reiterating the importance of those matches, but essentially we want you to apply for wherever you feel is appropriate to you, and then we'll have those conversations with you once we close the applications.
Another question here is, given the complexity of the infrastructure space, are there considerations around probity if the mentor and the mentee end up in a competitive situation?
Sounds like a question that I've come up recently. I think one of the things that we endorse with our community is an open dialogue between the parties that does not relate to any specificities around your work, right? So, in other words, you're on an NDA for a particular project and there might be issues with, not being able to obviously discuss some of the details of that project with a mentee, but it's a primary example of the poor cultural condition of our industry, because I do think I understand the question. I think it's important, but I think the whole point to the mentoring scheme is to kind of stay away from those types of discussions anyway and give hypothetical insight, hypothetical discussions around X project provided some challenges for X reasons. And obviously to the mentee, here are some tools and potential insight into how I achieved a better result or a greater result or a solution, essentially. Good question, though. Thank you.
And one last comment, because there doesn't seem to be any more questions, but look, there is a chance still to pop in a question if you like. One last comment from one of our attendees is, as a mature recent graduate entering the workforce, it is very daunting and a mentor would make all the difference.
Yeah, wonderful. And I am just navigating over to the chat dialog box, the question dialog box in the GoToWebinar control panel. And one question, which is actually really something we hadn't thought about, that can mentors access the group workshops too, which is a really good question because we hadn't thought about that. And I'm not sure if we've included that checkbox on the mentor applications, but we endorse our mentors to help us host some of the group mentoring workshops, but I don't think we have any issue with opening it up. Nicole?
I think originally the idea was to, I guess, for our unmatched mentees in the past, have that, resource for them because we weren't able to match them, and we wanted to give them something, worthwhile still to be a part of as part of the WIB Mentor Scheme. Now that we've opened it up to obviously all mentees, look, I guess it is something that we'd have to probably speak about with the rest of the global team, but I don't see why not. But yeah, usually our mentors will probably act as hosting those sessions rather than attending. But look, people are always willing to learn. So I think, yeah, it is worthwhile mentioning.
Thanks, Nicole. And that's all we've got, I think, for today. And look, we have recorded this session. We are, as I mentioned, hosting these sessions all over the world in other languages, including Italian, Spanish, Portuguese. If you are interested in attending womeninbim.org events, you'll see those links. And we have other people presenting the Women in BIM Mentor Scheme over the next few weeks. We have our UK hosted session this evening, obviously AM GMT. So I'd encourage you to dial into that one if you'd like. And finally, it's important for me to mention that just quickly, if you are not a member, please join us, because membership is connecting, and it is that connectivity piece between different people all over the world that we want to see and we want to try and achieve as a global initiative for two reasons. Firstly, to align to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which are one of our primary drivers, and secondly, to support and endorse, even more recently, the International Women's Day theming around digital and uniting women in the industries across the world to be digital. So thank you again. Thank you to Nicole. Thank you to our global core team. If you'd like to get in touch, it is mentor@womeninbim.org. Thanks a lot.